Right folks, here are the questions, or questions like the ones from paper 1 in the prelim. Stop the video when you see the question, have a go at it yourself, and then run through the bits of the video so I can give you hints on how to do each question. Check your answers against the ones in the video. Alright, best of luck. Now, first one. You should be able to do FOIL. So if you're using FOIL like this, now the main thing is, remember negative times a negative is positive, so that minus t times minus 5t goes to plus 5t squared. So that's the answer. 4 times 7 is 28. Now when you do, where is it? The middle bit, minus 27t, this bit here, that's because you do t times, or minus t times 7, and 4 times minus 5. Now that's going to be minus t times 7, which is minus 7t, and 4 times minus 5t, which is minus 20t. Now remember, don't use this rule with adding, so minus 7 plus minus 20, they go together to make that one, minus 27. Et voila, there's the answer. Right, next. Okay, now, this is completed square form when you've got x plus a all squared plus b. The number to focus on is this 10. Okay, so that 10, half it, and then square it. So half of it is 5, squared is 25. Okay, so what you then need to do, count how to get to this number. From the 25 you've got to 28, end up having plus 3. That is where this one comes in. Okay, so this one is halved to give you this one down here, plus 5, and then 5 squared is 25, plus 3 to get you 28. So that's what happens with that one. If you're asked to work out the turning point using this particular example, it's the opposite of this number here, so that's minus 5, and it's the same one here. So if it's going to look like this, minus a and b. If you've got it in this form, minus a is going to be your x value, so minus 5 like this here, and this number here, b, is just going to go in as 3. So that's the turning point. Now, how do you know if it's maximum or minimum? When x squared is positive, i.e. if you've not got anything here. Now if you obviously had a minus, oh, not very good minus, is it? Anyway, you know what I mean. If you had minus x squared, let's do it here. Right, if you had minus x squared here, that would give you that shape, and that would be a maximum turning point. Okay, so that's when it's negative x squared. Okay, but for this one, you've got x squared is positive, so that's a minimum turning point. And that's how you know when you're talking about the nature of the turning point is minimum or maximum. Okay, nature of the roots is something different. We'll come on to that in a minute. Right, folks, for this question, when you've got two two operations like dividing and adding like you've got here, you need to remember BODMAS. Now, one thing about BODMAS, if it says of, that means you multiply. It doesn't mean divide. Okay, so you multiply the fractions together if it says of. Okay, so what we've got here is 4/7 divided by 12/13. So when it says divide, you change it to times, and you flip that second fraction over, so it becomes 13/12. When you're multiplying, it's top times top, bottom times bottom. What I've done is I've seen there's a common factor of 4 between the 4 and the 12, so I've divided them both by 4. That gives me 1 and 3. So the calculation I'm doing is 1 times 13 and 7 times 12, so 13/21. Now what I have to do is 13/21 plus the remaining fraction here, 2/5. What I have to do is make sure that these two fractions have the same denominator. But the answer is neither of these two. You can see that 13 plus 2 is 15, 21 plus 5 is 26, and for this one, 26 over 105, I've done 13 times 2, 21 times 5. No, definitely not. This is what you do. Some people call it kiss and smile. That's fine. So you multiply the 21 by the 5, and then you cross multiply 13 times 5, which is here, and 21 times 2, which is here. You add these together, and then you've got 107 over 105. That's a top-heavy fraction, so you change it to 1, which takes out 105 out of 105. The remaining is 2. So it's 1 and 2 105ths. Easy, as long as you remember. Now, next one. A bag costs £115.50 in a sale, which advertises £30 off the original price. Now, the important thing here, folks, is to make sure you know what is happening here. You always start with £100. Right, 30% off means 70% left. That's why we've got here. There's two ways to do it. You can either divide by what you've got and multiply by what you want. So you've got 70%, you want 100% because you want the original amount. So you divide by 70 times by 100. I've just written out in a different way here to make it into one whole fraction. Okay. Or you can use the multiplier 0.70. We divide because you're going back in time. Even though it says multiplier, you're going backwards, so you're doing the opposite of multiplying. You're dividing. So there's an example of how it's done in that case. 115.50 times 100 over 70. This is the working you could do. Now I've multiplied these two together to get this. I've cancelled out the zeros, and then I've been able to divide everything through by 7. So that's the answer. Or what I've done, if I'm dividing by 0.7, I'm clearing the decimals, timesing by 10 over 10. 10 divided by 10 is 1. So if I'm doing this, it's the same as multiplying by 1. And I get exactly the same as I've got up here. So either way will work. Do not be afraid of fractions. You'll be able to find some way of doing it. Even if it makes the numbers bigger, that's okay. As long as you can clear the decimal points with something like this, you should be able to do this kind of calculation. But remember, it's not mental. You can write stuff down, that's not a problem. Right, the roots of this. Now, the nature of the roots, if it says determine the roots, the nature of the roots, so that should technically say, sorry. First deliberate mistake. Right, nature of the roots. So, you use b squared minus 4ac, that is key. So, what you need to make sure you've got is the values for a and b and c. Now remember, b is negative, c is negative, so the negatives go in brackets. I've put the 2 in brackets as well, just to keep things clear. So minus 7 squared is 49. Remember, when you've got a negative number squared, the negative is squared as well. So negative times a negative is positive. 7 squared is 49. And what we've got here is the taking away of 4 times 2 times minus 8, which is minus 64. 113 is what you get when you combine these. Remember, minus or taking away a negative is plus. So 113. Now you have to say this. You condition. Greater than 0. Therefore roots are real and distinct. That's absolutely vital because it links what you've done here to your answer here. And then you say what the roots are. Right, next question. If you need to work out information about a question, or a line like this, you will notice it's not in the right form, so you need to change that. Okay. What you need is, if you want a straight line, the line is the gradient plus a point. Now you've got a point here, that's 1 minus 2. What you now need from here is the gradient. Okay, it's not in the right form because what should form is y equals mx plus c. Okay, so what you need to do is something with this. You need to change that into. Okay, so just rearranging taking the 4x away from both sides, as you would with a normal equation, you get 5y equals minus 4x plus 40. Divide through by 5, leave it as a fraction, minus 4/5. Okay, much easier. You don't have to do a calculation, just leave it like that, minus 4/5. So, we need to use our line formula. That I would say is easier than y equals mx plus c. If you use y equals mx plus c, that's okay, but you've got all the information here. M is minus 4/5 from rearranging this. A and B are 1 and minus 2, so minus 4/5 goes in here. A, which is 1, goes in here, and B, which is minus 2, goes in there. And remember, because you're taking away B, is taking away minus 2. So that's what you've got for your equation. In some cases you'll need to rearrange it if it says write it in something like this form. Okay, so what we've done here, multiply that in the brackets. I am cross multiplying that 5 because I've divided by 5 this side, so I do the opposite, multiply by 5 this side. That's why I've got 5y plus 10 equals minus 4x plus 4. Remember again, minus 4 times minus 1 is plus 4. And I'm just changing things around, and I've got the correct form of my equation. Good. Next, everybody's favourite, trig graphs. Yay! Right, okay, now in the exam you had an example like this. You had to work out the values of A and B. It does say write down, so you don't need any working. But just to highlight what you do, this value, or this distance from the top to the very bottom, is 8 here, because it's 7, take away minus 1, that's what I've got there. But the amplitude is half of that. Okay. Now it was slightly different in the exam because the graph started at the bottom and went up for sine wave. Okay, so that meant the A value was negative, but here this does exactly what cos should do. You should start at the top and go down at the bottom and back up. Okay, now when you've got your 4 value for your amplitude, these numbers should be 4 and minus 4. All of them, both of them have been raised by 3, so that's why B is plus 3. Now, the most difficult part of the question is when you this kind of thing. How far along the x-axis is the point A? Now you can see from the graph that this is one whole cos wave. One whole cos wave should last 360 degrees. Okay, so that means that this bit here equals 360. Okay, so that's what you need to solve. In some cases you'll get 2x here, and you will know to divide by 2. Here, because we've got 3 quarters, we're effectively dividing by 3 quarters, or solving that equation. So that's what I would do. Clear the 4 from the top, clear the 4 to the top from the bottom. So that goes from the 4 times 360 is 1440. Divide by 3, you get x is 480. Root 5 times root 10 plus root 8. Now, these two, because they're multiplied, can go together. They make root 50. What you then got to do is add root 8. Now, do not get root 58. No, don't do that. You need to simplify both of them. Okay, look for a square factor. There's a square factor in 50, and there's a square factor in 8. 25 is a square factor, and 4 is a square factor here. Both of them end up, the other bits being 2. So that's how you can then put them together, by adding. So root 25 is 5, root 4 is 2, root 5 root 2 plus 2 root 2 gives you an answer of 7 root 2. Right, now next one goes with surds. This is indices. The question says give your answer with positive indices. Now 5 and 8 and 10 are not index parts of the question. So what you'll need to do is do 5 times 8 and then divide by 10. So that's the bit you can simplify first, just the whole numbers. Okay. Now what you've got is, and it may be this, you may be easier or better simplifying the whole number first and then writing all the terms so you can then simplify them down. Now, obviously that x cubed term goes with x to the 7, and the y squared term goes with y to the minus 3. So, the rule is divide the power terms, so you subtract the powers. So we've got x cubed over x to the 7, which gives you x to the minus 4, and y squared divided by y to the minus 3. So that's going to be 2 take away minus 3, and remember, minus, or taking away a minus means it's adding, so 2 plus 3 is why you've got the 5 there. Okay, so the answer will look like this. If you've got a negative power, it goes on the bottom and becomes positive. So the whole number is still there, that's 4, y to the 5 stays on the top, x to the minus 4 goes to the bottom and makes x to the plus 4. Right, question 10. This has appeared quite a few times recently in non-calculator papers. You're told that sine B is 0.6. You're given 15, you're given 18, and you're asked to work out the exact value of sine A. Now, hopefully you should be able to work out, because you're using 2 sine values and 2 lengths, be the sine rule. Okay. Now what I've done down here is say better still use the other way round. Okay. What we'll end up doing is removing one of these fractions, either the A fraction or the B fraction or the C fraction, depending on which information we have here. Okay. What we then need to do is put the numbers in. Okay. Now I've basically missed a step. I'm assuming that what you've done is had a go at this question and decided that this one here is A, this one here is B, this one here is C, and you obviously don't need the C values because you've got B here, you've got A, you're told that sine B is 0.6, so you've got information about that one, and you need to work out sine A. Alright, you do not need C or anything about this angle. That's why we've decided to get rid of this one here. So what we now do is put the information into our 2 fractions. We don't know what sine A is, but we do know what A is, and we do know what these two are, 0.6 and 1 and 18. Now, a lot of people write sine 0.6. It is not sine 0.6. Sine B is 0.6. So that whole thing there, sine B, becomes 0.6 because that's what you are told up here. This is sine B, so it's 0.6. Right, now, once you've got your 4 values, you cross multiply because you want the sine A to be on its own. The 15 goes up there with 0.6, so you're ending up with 0.6 times 15 over 18. Some people got this far in the prelim and stopped, probably because they didn't know how to clear that decimal point. This is what you could do. Not saying you have to, this is an example. So 15 over 18, if you write it as one fraction like we've got here, 15 over 18, these two share a common factor of 3, so simplify it down to 5 over 6. You should be able to see that 0.6 divided by 6 is 0.1, times by 5 is 0.5. Right, one thing about changing the subject or rearranging equations or doing what we did in the past question is you need to make sure the subject is on the top of your fraction. So what I'm going to do first here is make it t over 1. I'm going to make 2 fractions. Then what I'm going to do is cross multiply. Now I need that w term on the top because you can see here w is my subject, so that has to go on the top. Okay. These two swap round. Now I don't need to swap the 2, I just swap the t and the w squared. So what I've done now, I've got w squared on the top, the t on the bottom with the 2, so w squared over 1 is 5v over 2t. Now if you think about it, w squared divided by 1 is just w squared. So the only thing is square root both sides. W equals root 5v over 2t. Make sure in this step, folks, you've got the square root over everything. Everything that you need to square root goes underneath the square root. Right, question 12. Calculate the exact value of the angle x. So we're given information about the arc and about the radius. We need to find that angle. So we use our three fractions. The part of the circle that's with degrees, the part of the circle that's the outside bit, the part of the circle that's the inside bit. So we'll need to work out which one we use and which ones we don't. Just taking off the information, we've got the angle, which is x, we've got the whole thing, which is 360, the arc we've been given is 4 pi, pi d is the length of the arc for the whole, or the length of the circumference. So x over 360, which is the information from here, equals 4 pi. 4 pi is this one. Pi times 18. Now remember, 9 times 2 is 18. That's how we get the 18 here. This is the radius. We want the diameter. Cross multiply again, so we get x on its own. And remember, x is on the top. That's where we want it. X equals 4 pi times 360 over pi times 18. You should be able to notice by now that the pi's cancel. It will just give you a series of numbers. 4 times 360 over 18. It's a fraction that you can simplify down. I've simplified the 18 with the 360. You could do the same with the 4 and the 18. Make the 4 2 and the 18 into 9. That would be okay. And I've got 4 times 20 is 80. Any way you want to simplify this down will work, and it will give you the answer 80 degrees. Oh yes, everybody's favourite, trig identities. Fantastic. Okay, so what you need to do is focus on the left hand side and change it so it becomes the right hand side. Now, two things that aren't given to you, two formulae if you like, that aren't given to you on the formula sheet are these two, which you need to use for this kind of question. Sine over cos is tan, and sine squared plus cos squared equals 1. So we need to choose one of these two, either this one or this one, to incorporate into this bit here. Now, hopefully you can see that there's no sine squared and cos squared in this left hand side, but there is tan, which we can replace it down here with sine over cos. So sin x over tan x, which is what we started with, I'm just rewriting it as a divide sum instead of a fraction. So the tan x bit will change to sin x over cos x. So we're dividing by a fraction. And if we divide by a fraction like we've done previously, it changes to a multiply, and multiply by the second fraction the other way around. Now if you can see what happens when I do this, I've just made the line bigger, so created one fraction, and the sin x and the sin x are the same, so they cancel out. I'm left with cos x. So that's my answer, and icing on the cake, yes, QED result. Good stuff, folks. That's paper 1 done. See you soon for paper 2.